Welcome to Betrayal Affairs. In today's video, it's strange how some moments in life feel like they belong in someone else's story, as if they're too surreal to be happening to you. I never imagined I'd be sitting here today, telling you about the night that changed everything. A night that began with laughter and ended with a heaviness in my heart I still carry to this day. But to truly understand that night, I need to take you back to the beginning, to when my world felt steady, safe, and predictable, or so I thought. My husband and I had been married for nearly 8 years. We weren't perfect, but we were comfortable. We had our routines, our quiet moments, and a mutual trust that, in my mind, was unshakable. I'd built my life around that trust. Every decision, every compromise, every promise I'd made was rooted in the belief that we were on the same page. We didn't have the kind of love that made headlines or swept people off their feet like in movies, but it was ours. Warm, dependable, familiar. At least, that's how I saw it. That evening, we'd been invited to a small get-together at a friend's house. Nothing fancy, just a casual gathering with familiar faces, people we'd known for years. My husband was more excited about it than I was. He loved socializing and I preferred quieter nights at home. But I went along, telling myself it would be good to step out of the same four walls, maybe laugh a little, maybe even feel young again. The night started lighthearted enough. Music hummed softly in the background, conversations flowed, and the air smelled faintly of grilled food and sweet wine. I remember standing in the kitchen, talking to a couple of old friends, when I noticed him. He wasn't someone I'd met before. Tall, confident, with an easy smile that made it seem like he'd known everyone there his whole life. There was something about the way he carried himself, not flashy, not loud, just assured. At first, I didn't think much of it. New people came and went in our social circle all the time. But then I caught him looking at me. Not in an intrusive way, but in a way that made me feel seen. I brushed it off. I was married, happily so, at least I believed I was. But as the evening unfolded, our paths crossed more than once. A shared joke here, a lingering glance there. It wasn't intentional, at least not on my part, but the more I noticed him, the harder it became to ignore the unspoken pull between us. Hours passed. My husband, a few drinks in, was starting to get drowsy. He found a comfortable spot on the couch in the living room and, before long, he was fast asleep. I stayed nearby at first, chatting with people, making sure he was okay. That's when I felt a gentle touch on my arm. I turned, and there he was, that man I'd exchanged fleeting glances with all night. His voice was low, almost cautious, when he asked if I could step outside for a moment. Something in me hesitated. I knew it wasn't the best idea. But I told myself it was harmless. Just a quick conversation in the fresh night air. Maybe he wanted to ask about someone we both knew, or maybe he just needed a break from the crowd. We slipped outside into the cool evening. The noise of the party softened behind us, replaced by the distant hum of the city. The air was crisp, carrying the scent of rain that had fallen earlier. We stood there for a moment, neither of us speaking. He finally broke the silence, saying he'd noticed me the second I walked in. That I seemed different. Grounded, yet somehow distant, like my mind was somewhere else entirely. I laughed softly, unsure how to respond. I told him I was just tired, that it had been a long week. But his gaze didn't waver. It was the kind of look that made you feel as though he could see right past the surface and into the thoughts you didn't dare say aloud. Minutes turned into what felt like hours. We talked about everything and nothing, how life had surprised us both, how people change over the years, how sometimes you wake up and realize the life you've built isn't exactly the one you pictured. His words were disarmingly honest, and I found myself saying things I hadn't voiced to anyone, not even my husband. And that was the danger of it. It wasn't about attraction in the obvious sense. It was about connection, the kind that creeps up on you quietly, catching you off guard. Standing there under the dim glow of the porch light, I realized I was letting my guard down. And the worst part? A part of me didn't want to pull it back up. We didn't cross any physical lines that night. No touch lingered too long, no words were overtly suggestive. But in a way, what happened between us felt even more dangerous than that. Because emotional boundaries, once blurred, are hard to rebuild. Eventually, I glanced back toward the house and saw my husband still sleeping, oblivious to the quiet storm brewing just a few feet away. Guilt surged through me, sharp and sudden. I told him, the man, that I needed to go back inside. His expression was unreadable, but he nodded, saying softly, "I understand." I walked back in, my heart pounding for reasons I couldn't fully explain. I sat next to my husband, brushing a hand through his hair, and for a moment I wondered if he could sense that something in me had shifted. If he woke up then and looked at me, would he see it in my eyes? That night, as we drove home, I stared out the window, replaying the conversation over and over. I told myself it was nothing, just a fleeting moment, easily forgotten. But deep down, I knew better. Moments like that don't just vanish. They linger. They plant seeds. And sometimes, they grow into things you never intended. In the weeks that followed, I found myself thinking about him more than I should have. Not constantly, but enough that it made me uneasy. Enough that I started questioning parts of my marriage I'd never examined before. And that was when I realized the true betrayal hadn't happened outside on that porch, it was happening in my own mind, every time I let myself drift back to that night. Some stories don't have dramatic endings. No explosive confrontations, no revelations that shatter everything in an instant. Sometimes, the most dangerous betrayals are the quiet ones, the kind that unfold in whispers, in glances, in the silence between words. And sometimes, the hardest person to forgive is yourself.